Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Wednesday, November 22nd. So, we have tomorrow being Thanksgiving, and then Friday, some other stuff is going to keep me busy, so I may not stream on Friday at all, or it may just be very late to very early one. And then pretty much just the whole Black Friday shopping aspect is also going to play a big role of just keeping me distracted throughout the entirety of this whole experience. So yeah, I wouldn't put it past the entire week being a bit of a bust until probably Tuesday, which probably means Wednesday. So yeah, a lot going on. As far as Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going, we have this Ritual Festival survey that's going to happen, which I could give them a piece of my mind about just putting that in the absolute wrong time. Talk about board timing. They're making slight changes here to the limited, forbidden limited. They don't do terrible jobs really of changing the meta by having giant ban lists compared to Magic the Gathering, which just bans everything that's not from the most recent 4 seasons, 4 expansions. But yeah, there might very well be an argument that that you should potentially Yu-Gi-Oh! Should change more cards than instead of less cards in the in their banned list to keep the game just more randomized in general. Although that really wouldn't fix too much. Like, inherently they need to reboot the whole series, and they are trying to do that in Japan, so they are doing the right thing. It's just some question that if the new version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Ever comes to the West, and if it ever succeeds past the old version of... I feel like Magic the Gathering at some point in its long history probably tried to do the exact same thing, and even Pokemon the card game, while it has changed kind of drastically, it could too do with a full reboot. And card games really just don't allow for that, because you already own the cards and you already know the rules as they were in the past, so it's very easy to ignore whatever any official authority says as far as the rules have changed or cards have been banned. They can ban them in tournament play, but most people aren't playing tournament play. It's almost incredibly impossible to change the rules on a board game to try and reboot a board game. At best, you see Monopoly just doing many variations. Apparently the schedule has been changed for, I assume this is Great British Pounds pricing being adjusted. So yeah, we've got probably way more to do today than I'll actually accomplish, because I didn't play any off screen. So we still have like one day here to do all of these remaining festival events. Duel 6 times, Ritual Summon 2 more times, Duel 9 more times, and Destroy cards 8 more times. That's the entire tall order there. On top of that, I also think, though I haven't made it to even the win ratio I need to make it to get the collectible set dressing piece. We'll double check that in a second. For the accountability section, I'll say I finished watching Lex, which probably helps me be a little bit more efficient by watching that. Like the best season is the last season, the fourth season. That really should have been the first season with just one pilot episode in front of it, and then they should have gone on for probably 4 more seasons. They are really, I think, at about 60 episodes, so the total episode order for the time would have been nowhere close to 100 episodes to be syndicated. Although in all fairness, are you really going to get a adult comedy, weird Canadian show syndicated in any time slot? Because it definitely isn't going to be over the air without being censored. And really, the visual censorship isn't going to be the problem. You're going to have to censor and edit out entire episodes just for themes and dialogue and stuff like that. It just really wouldn't work. So yeah, they definitely are in a weird position. Yeah, I need to win here and here just to get this piece, and that's really my only hope. We'd have to be on an incredible win streak to even get up to this point, let alone trying to get the free tickets. Let's go ahead and just hop in. Yeah. The thing there to definitely take from Lex, and I guess if you were gonna go on the journey of watching old sci-fi shows, and you wanted to start with like the worst shows instead of some of the best shows, which really isn't the way to do it. It almost makes a lot more sense to watch the best shows, whatever the best show is in your mind. I would say Babylon 5. Although Babylon 5 is very political. Almost all sci-fi things are shows that were designed to be watched by lonely people on Fridays who can't go to parties or hang out. With the pandemic and modern times, maybe less people are going to parties on Fridays and hanging out in general. But when these shows were airing, they definitely were designed to be time fillers and for bored, lonely nerds, which I guess is tattling on myself that I've watched quite a bit of them. But yeah, you probably would want to start with good short movies that are somewhat easy to understand. So there is definitely an argument for things like the Star Trek movie reboots that they would make a lot of sense to watch first if you're going to get into sci-fi. There probably are some cartoons and kid-friendly sci-fi things that you would start with anyways before that. Now, does that count as destroying 3 cards? It should. But yeah, start with like the good sci-fi things, and when you've run out of good sci-fi things, which would take quite a while, potentially on a second rewatch, watch something like Lex, and then watch something like Farscape and see how Farscape did it like way better. Very much by not pigeonholing itself as being this weird sex drama show that really should have been more of a sex comedy, and some of it became a sex comedy, certainly. Some of the jokes from the last season of Lex and Everything on Earth don't ring true these days. Sure, you can make a joke that everybody in America has guns and end up with multiple episodes ending in shootouts, but they played too heavily into it, and it just would not be taken as funny, or as funny as it may have been originally. And it definitely was a case of Canadians/Germans making fun of the entire state of Texas by just playing to very generic stereotypes. Let's see. But it is definitely a show that if I was a TV producer, I don't know what more you could do with it. Sci-Fi, if I can give any small credit to Sci-Fi, which you almost never can, has been a little bit better about very slowly finding the money for other shows to at least reach 100 episodes, more to sell DVDs. Now that we're seeing DVDs and 4K UHD Blu-rays potentially just disappearing completely, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see earlier and earlier cancellations of shows. Syndication has not meant the same thing anyways. TV doesn't mean the same thing anyways. So it definitely is much more of a situation where they are happy to go 1, 2, 3 seasons at most, and then put it on Hulu, put it on Netflix. And yeah, the eras of or even having a chance of going 100 episodes and going longer, going 5 seasons, may be just unacceptable. And in all fairness, 5 seasons and 100 episodes, 100 is just a very arbitrary round number they picked. It doesn't even make sense throughout the number of days of the year. There's 365 days out of the year. You would think that would lean to 52 weeks. So the right number for syndication should be somewhere around 52, maybe put in a little bit of extra buffer and go up to 60. Because it is, if you're going to pick an arbitrary number, it's a much more logical arbitrary number to say, you're going to air an entire series over the course of 1 year, not 1.5 years or 2 years. And you see it in the longer running shows like Charmed, where they're doing entire mini marathons, or they're at least doing 2 episodes every day or every week. So yeah, that did kill the thing I was killing time with, though, although I'm still playing Star Trek Lower Decks, Tinka Fuma, an adult mobile game, Memento Mori, and 7 Mortal Sins Ecstasy, another adult game. So I'm playing 4 different mobile games, also distracting me. And, you know, 7 Mortal Sins is probably the one most likely to drop. It is fairly demanding on time with not as much of a rewarding experience. Star Trek Lower Decks takes the least amount of time because it has the least amount of content, and is probably the worst game of the 4. Memento Mori, I want to play a lot more every day, but I'm constantly running against the wall of making very slow progress, and I do think there is a danger that in a couple months or so I'll just give up on Memento Mori, because it's like it'll be 3-4 days between any real progress being made consistently, or even weeks. And yeah, the only thing that can fight against that will be daily quests, which Memento Mori does have daily quests to fight against that. Whereas I feel like I could probably top out on Tinkafuma, but they are doing a good enough job to have like rotating events, so there's always a new event to put your stamina into. So yeah, those are my distractions. Meanwhile, I probably should find a way to squeeze in another Lego set, but won't. Probably until New Year, if I was to really guess. I did work on my Smart On Air sign. I took the time to actually solder the wires to the pre-purchased on-air sign. Like, up until this point, maybe I didn't make that particularly clear, I've just been working with an ESP32 type chip, programming it, and I've been having it, well, I was using one chip that had an LED on it, so the LED on the chip would come on and off whenever I was streaming to show I was on air. For the cheaper chip that I'm going to use in the final production, unless something changes drastically, it doesn't have a user controllable LED, so it had it just send a text message over, send a text message basically, not a cell phone text message, but a message in text form that said LED on, LED off. So this was a visual step of progress to show that the wiring and the programming work together, and that this wasn't all just fantasy happening in my head. And for the most part, it wasn't too big of a problem, but I did run into some issues, certainly. Right now, the way it's plugged in, it has the LEDs kind of having a flicker. It's not uncommon for LEDs to kind of have a flicker, and that may just be the case too, is that there may just be a flicker. Once there's a diffuser light behind it, it may not be noticeable, or it may just be noticeable. The chip itself has a tiny little red LED on it, so theoretically, even if the LEDs, the on-air sign would be off, there might be a tiny little red glow that happens. That's not a huge deal, and it might even be considered a feature instead of a bug, to just say, hey, if you see a slight red glow, then you've left the thing on and the battery is draining, or it is on, so you know it is powered up. It would be a good way if you had it running on batteries, which I'll have to test how long, if at all, it can run on the actual batteries before the power goes out. The soldering and wiring is a big issue. I'm gonna probably over this Black Friday buy a soldering gun that my shaky hand can handle more. These are tiny little holes. I found some Ethernet solid core wires to solder into it, and it's just like really difficult. Now, ideally what I'd like to be able to do is jam the board, the wires through the 3 holes, and then have a tiny little pool that I'd almost have to make myself of solder, and then just have it effectively surface mount the wires onto the circuit board there. Even if I did that, though, wiring it to the actual plastic sign still would probably have to be done by hand. Yeah, and in that process, the circuit board that one of the wires that was already attached to is so cheap, and obviously it's going to be made cheaper, but it's so cheap that it literally pulled the metal off the silicon which is a thing that definitely can happen if you put any real pressure or yanking force or twisting force on a wire soldered directly to a cheap single layer silicon board. That's why you mostly want through hole connectors, and these are not through hole connectors on the plastic on air sign. And this process took time. Like, it definitely, in my mind, brings out the idea of, hey, this would be way easier and nicer if I could just pay some Chinese slave effectively to solder all the board in by default, and that would be a case of scaling up, certainly, where you could potentially have an assembler on factory worker soldering the board in completely. But scaling up would be almost impossible because they would want probably a run of 10,000 at minimum. So yeah, it's just not really realistic that I'd ever have that much extra money and expect that I would sell 10,000 units anyways. Or I'd have a storage facility to hold a pallet of, or not a pallet, multiple pallets of 10,000 smart on air signs. And I kind of want to, at a certain level, not tie myself to any single plastic on air sign. Like the general wiring concept here should work for anything. So there is an idea that I could get like a Minecraft torch light is a toy that I saw was popular, and maybe they're clearancing those out. But yeah, anything that effectively could be a light that turns on, anything with a switch, anything that runs off USB-C, more than likely would work with my programming and the ESP32 chip. The only potential problem there would be just if it was really drawing a ton of power. But for the most part, the power probably wouldn't be that high. A good old-fashioned neon sign wouldn't work, for instance, because that wouldn't be USB-C running, and that would be a ton of power. But yeah, and it definitely makes an argument that potentially I should just sell the chips, and that definitely is a thought too, is to get down the process of just soldering wires, soldering 3 wires to the chip, putting in the programming, and selling the chip in a like envelope package for very low shipping, and then letting people with their own on-air signs do the wiring themselves. The danger there, of course, is that you give somebody a do-it-yourself soldering project, and then all of a sudden they solder things wrong, and they're complaining, and they're asking for customer service. And that's where I definitely don't want to get bogged down, is refunds and customer service and things like that. Particularly if it's not my fault that something needs customer service. Now, I did want to show this. This was the other thing that I worked on after soldering it in. And after soldering it in, it didn't immediately work. The problem with it there is I changed the code as to what the hotkey trigger should have been. And so it was calling the old hotkey trigger and that was being received as invalid information by OBS WebSocket and resetting the connection. Which, I mean, it's just really ridiculous that it can't be more stable than that as far as OBS WebSocket's code. Like there's that the default decision that was made in the code, it's intentionally programmed to just reset the connection if it receives anything that confuses it, instead of saying, I didn't get that message, which is very much what you would have on any kind of network communication protocol. Otherwise, you just say, I didn't understand that message, I didn't get all that message, repeat please, or here's an error code response, you can do whatever you want with it. But to just reset the whole process is pointless. If the handshake procedure had already worked once, why reset the handshake procedure? Why not just assume the connection is still good? Ethernet, by the way, I think it had its most recent anniversary. I would say Ethernet probably is 50 years old now. Although, arguably there might be types of Ethernet that are very old that aren't really recognizable as far as a Cat5e RJ45 connection is concerned. There definitely was some kind of networking connection where you would just run wires through the ceilings and then you would stab into them with a connector to add a new port. And it was much closer to the old-fashioned Tolkien ring setup, which that was, for a time there, looking like that was going to be what people connected the internet with, is just everybody would be on one single wire in a Tolkien ring setup, or a token ring. I think it's token, actually, not Tolkien. Not the Lord of the Rings author, although I wouldn't be surprised if it is. Actually, it's called a Tolkien ring setup as a joke. There is, I guess, a question, certainly, as far as whether we need all the wires in an RJ45 connection. There was a twisted pair setup in Ethernet, generally for upload, download, so you don't have it, both can talk at the same time. And then there was effectively two more pairs of two wires that don't really serve much of a purpose. We have now done power over Ethernet, and we use some of that directly for that purpose. But even now, I don't see a real reason why that you would need all 8 wires. CAN bus and IC squared and things like that are all protocols, more modern protocols that work on 2 wires. UART or JTAG are usually 4 wires. Optical, definitely if everybody went to optical, at best optical would be 2 wires for bidirectional upload and download. Although in most cases optical is just going to be 1 wire, but that's good enough. You also have multi-banding optical, where you can send multiple signals throughout the one optical wire. So there definitely are limitations and cost problems with optical, but yeah. Ethernet inherently needs a rethink. Although, in reality, if you were going to rethink connections, why not just make everything USB-C? USB-C has like 12 connections on it, way more wires, but then USB-C also has a whole bunch of power concepts in it, and it has data and video and internet all going through it potentially at the same time too. USB-C would be the one connector to rule them all. If only we could go back in time and give the USB-C standard to computer developers when they first made computers, but they inherently wouldn't really be able to make a USB-C chip. It would be too slow, and they couldn't probably make the connectors as small as they are now. They could probably make a USB-C that's 4 or 5 times as big as the connector is now. So you could potentially have a giant USB-C connector that is reversible, but that would be the beginning of something, certainly. Of course, if we could go back and send technology to ourselves in the past, we'd probably just blow ourselves up with that technology. Anyways, from my rambling, because I was having the problem of the hotkey being wrong, I decided that it was necessary to make a HTML5 pattern to try and prevent the wrong information from being typed in. So I've been working on this regex, regular expression pattern, and a lot of this is wrong. Like this bracket and then page and then a line, a bar to say or, bass, or treble, or VK underscore, or not VK or underscore, just nothing, volume. Any of those can match or not match, followed by either down or up. So what this is a list of hotkeys, and basically what it boils down to is you could have a page down or up, or you could just have down or up. You could have bass down or up, treble down or up, volume down or up, or virtual keyboard underscore volume down or up. And those are all valid hotkeys that are defined in OBS. And there's about 300 of those overall that are valid. So I've been effectively doing compression to take, say, the word back here and seeing if back could be compressed and reused. In this case, back forward, backspace, back tab, backslash underscore RT102, I don't know what that is, but it's not the same here because in this case it's back left or back right, so these two don't line up. The problem here though is that I've taken everything and I'm basically making it all alphabetical, so because that'll help me compress it. And I've taken it down from about 300 lines to 64 lines, but it still would be a fairly extremely long regular expression to try and match all of these. So what I probably will end up doing is taking it down to the next level and saying in these brackets A through Z can be the first character, and that will eliminate nothing, but it will say capital A through Z or 0x, or or 0 could be the first character. I don't think there's a single hotkey that starts with a number other than 0. So that's 27 possible characters that the first character could be out of, let's just roughly estimate, 103 the way this is being written. So that saves you a massive amount of things where if you did a lowercase a, immediately the pattern would reject it just for the first letter. If you did the number 2, immediately the pattern would reject it. That's fine for the first letter. When it gets trickier, I need to actually play here, although I'm not really getting anywhere with the playing. Where it gets tricky is the second letter. So what I need to do, and I won't talk about this too much, is I need to run through what the second letters could be. Page, the second letter would be an A. Bass would be an A. Treble would be an R. VK would be a K. Volume alone would be a O. Down would be an O. U would be a P. More than likely the second letter is going to be A through C altogether, but there might be a case where there's just nothing that starts with, say, a Q. Yeah, pretty much sure that there isn't any character that goes A through Z, then the second letter is a Q. So we could eliminate that. We could probably eliminate Y. We could probably eliminate Z. Once you get to that point, and this is just, I guess, a free tutorial on regular expression compressions, it does open up room for mistakes still. Up until this point, only things that actually matched would be acceptable. But if I say E is acceptable because it can yin, yen, or yes, yes is acceptable, well then XE would also be acceptable. But that's only opening up a small gateway of possibility. Somebody would have to effectively look at the regular expression to try and put in a ridiculous mistyped keyword for it to really make sense. So yeah, you let in E, and then XE would be allowed, and then you look at the third letter and you go with that. And inherently, I imagine what I could do here, and it might be smarter just to start all over again, is start with the list in its original form, in which it just listed every hotkey, and then look at the longest character and say, this character can either be this or it can be nothing. Because, let's see, double acute here might be the longest letter, longest word, keyword. And so if I just said at the end, it can be an E or it can be nothing, then that locks it down to just being the E. And then you work your way backwards there, which may mean that all of this was really a waste. But it was definitely a learning experience. I've never really put enough time into learning regular expressions in general. And this isn't really the pattern. It's worth pointing out here that what you would do is you would start with pattern equals single quote, in my case, could be a double quote, and then a little, I think you call that a caret, but maybe not, maybe the little rooftop symbol to indicate the very first character on the left would equal this in a big brackets, and then you'd put another or, and then you would add this line, and it would just be one long run-on line for each and every one of these. There is definitely some compression the way I've done it that has saved a lot of time here, in that all the vowels A, E, I, O, U, and Y can have a hotkey that's acute, which is weird. but only A, E, I, O, U, and whatever the dead underscore indicator can have grave, circumflex, tilde, and diaresis, which I don't even know what that is. Or all those can be missing, and you could just have an acute hotkey or a grave or a tilde hotkey. But only dead also has dead above dot or above ring or below dot or breathe. And yeah, when you get to certain letters, G, as far as the hotkeys can be either game or go or greater. And at a certain point, you also have to question when you're trying to do regex expression, and this is where I'll wrap up this little lesson here, whether you're actually saving any space. Because if it was something like GO or GA, putting a bracket, then A, then a bar, then O, then another bracket is adding 1, 2, 3 extra characters to the code, whereas GO and then GA with a bracket in between it or would be 3 characters too. So yeah, it's probably always better to split it, but there isn't a lot of room to split things even further. Hang up here is an example of where you can split it more. So you have H, and then you can have hangu, which then could have a P and spell hang up, or it could have an L to spell hangul, or it can have a hangul underscore and then have start and Joma special, and then it can have either Roma, Gion, Ban, post or pre, and then Hana at the end. So Roma, Han, Gion, Han, these are all Asian letter things. Or you can have M, and then you can have MU to spell mu, and then you can have music or multi, and then it can be multiply or multi-key, and then it can also be my sites. Of course, this kind of regex compression doesn't really make a lot of sense in actual writing. Like, anybody that wrote this way would definitely have people complaining quite a bit, and it only saves a small amount of space. And arguably, for my ESP32, it might overload and demand too much processing power in general as far as trying to match a pattern like that. So, like, regex is relatively efficient, but you can definitely go overboard, I'm sure. And so yeah, it almost certainly makes a lot more sense to make a rough pattern that eliminates, let's say, 92% of all incorrect typing in there, instead of making an absolute precise pattern that only accepts everything that's exactly right. Now, what's irritating about this is HTML5 coding, and there's almost certainly a JavaScript way that would be better if I used JavaScript, but I'm not going to use JavaScript because I don't know if JavaScript would really run in a captive portal window. But just as HTML5 is written, all these options are going to pop up and autofill effectively using what is called a data list in the input field as far as an input tag. So I'm already spending a ton of text telling you, having the pop-up list define what inputs are being suggested, but they're only a suggestion. There's just not a way to say, no, you need to autocorrect to these suggestions, or these suggestions need to be done that way. Now, inherently what you would do is you'd make a pull down selector instead of an input field. But if I make a pull down selector, then I mean, honestly, that probably is the better move. It's just to make a pull down selector. But there's something weird with the code and the library I'm using. I think that prevents that from working. It probably wouldn't prevent it from working, but yeah, I had some hesitation there. I should probably reevaluate that, because that would also save a lot of code too, and not require making a pattern in the first place. Although pull down selectors in part are not ideal, because then you have, particularly on cell phones, this long scrolling setup where you're potentially going to scroll down quite a bit to get to the key you want, instead of just starting by typing. The suggestions would get you very close to where you're wanting to go. Yeah, the suggestion fields of a data list will get you very close to the input you want to use in 2 or 3 keystrokes, whereas scrolling down a list of 300 plus hotkeys is not going to be anywhere as fast as that. Alright, so that was a long rambling tutorial on regular expressions. I definitely would say, if you're into programming, take any opportunity to learn regular expressions. It is used in almost every programming language at some point, and you really will want to get fairly deep into understanding every little in and out of it. There's another thing called POSIX. Try to learn that too. I haven't learned really enough to even really understand what POSIX is, but yeah. It definitely makes a lot of sense to try to find a webmastering HTML5 class, regardless if you're planning on programming video games that would never use HTML or not. You should understand HTML in its most recent version, whether that has 5 or 6 by the time you get around to it, or later. But yeah, understanding that is very helpful, and don't be afraid, I would say, to have take a second year of HTML that is very deep into JavaScript, because that's really where you want to get into it too. And they may just have straight up separate JavaScript classes too. But yeah, you probably can learn HTML in half a year, but the JavaScript stuff, a year, even 2 if JavaScript is separate, will be very helpful. Of course, it can be very overwhelming too, because, like, ideally, whether you're in high school or college, and in 4 years' time, you should be learning C++ or C#, you should be learning HTML, you should be learning JavaScript, you might want to learn Rust. I would say it's definitely a language to learn. If somebody's teaching Java at this point, then don't take that class. But it is like 4 different languages, plus all the STEM stuff is teaching kids how to program using Scratch or Python, which those are very much baby languages that maybe just really confuse the issue more than help. Particularly the drag and drop visual scratch language. I don't know how much that really is helping people learn programming. And certainly I could say learn Selenium if you're ever going to interact with a website, or UI Vision is the extension that uses Selenium, but that is mostly JavaScript itself. So, and that's a macro programming language, not a actual programming language. It's a macro software. Yeah, and today was really the worst day for me to go off on a tangent. But I did also need to warm up a little bit. There isn't really a lot of news, but there's a ton of sales that we're going to go through. Video Games Chronicle says Ubisoft says that Prince of Persia's remake has passed an important milestone and, quote, development is progressing at its Montreal studio. An important milestone could be that it just secured more funding. I mean, as far as we know, any milestone whatsoever could just be this very arbitrary thing that the publisher made. The thing to remember, though, is that is this the new Prince of Persia game with the black character and the rap music trailer, or is this the remake of the original Prince of Persia? Looking at the screenshot, this looks like the remake of the original Prince of Persia. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the important milestone could be as something as simple as the first compile has actually compiled. The code has actually compiled into a runnable program, where up until this point very few people have been working on it, and it has just been executing inside the editor. Although, in all fairness, if you're using modern engines like Unreal or Unity, I wouldn't be surprised if running in the editor isn't that much different from compiling and having an executable. But yeah, it might be that they have the beginnings of one full level. It might be that they have every bit of planned content now has some code in it, where up until this point there was a lack of code for certain things, like you would just press the A button to jump and nothing would happen, that type of thing. Of course, it might be on the other end of the spectrum, and this is just a great example of how an important milestone could just mean anything. It may just be a case of they've hired enough members to start working on the project, and it has, up until this point, just been talked about in a pre-production stage. Or it might be that they have like almost everything done and it is now leaving alpha, and I think that is definitely the implication they're trying to make, is that it is leaving its alpha state in which features might actually be added to the game, and now it is in a early beta state where it's just going to be months and months, if not years, of bug testing and optimization to get the features in there. Particularly for a remake, it would be fairly easy for a game to exit an alpha state if you're using the true alpha state definition and not some video game perversion of the phrase alpha, because in the remake you kind of already know what Prince of Persia 1 should have as far as features. That there really isn't a good reason for them to add anything more than what was there originally. So the parkouring, the jumping, the rewinding with time, the fighting mechanics. And yeah, Prince of Persia definitely is an old enough game where a full remake may be a little lackluster. That is also true for a lot of old games, like the Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3 remakes. If they were just purely remade, there is a decent chance that it would just not feel like a modern game enough, in that you're just platforming and you're just occasionally shooting things. I definitely have felt it with a lot of games where it feels like, okay, you've got one main gameplay mechanic, which is platforming, and then you have a fighting gameplay mechanic that you do very rarely, and otherwise the game is just incredibly empty feeling and boring. You just need a little bit more going for it. I'd say BioShock 1 probably establishes a very rough guideline of where games before BioShock, and maybe this is my own bias, and maybe System Shock should be the line in the sand. But yeah, games before BioShock probably could get away with just having running and gunning, but then BioShock goes, no, we're going to have running and gunning, but we're also going to have magical abilities on the other hand, and we're going to have RPG elements, and we're going to have a hacking mini game, and we're going to have a deep narrative story that is interesting. When I'm having not really played the first Prince of Persia game, when I think about what the story is, I think it's pretty much just that there's an evil sultan and there's a princess, and it really is just Aladdin for most people's references. I don't think that there's much deeper of a narrative or a story there, and yeah, there's definitely room for more narrative and stories. BioShock also, I guess, had collectibles and audio tapes and all of that, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the original Prince of Persia didn't have any of that. You could also say it was Assassin's Creed 1 that really pushed it that far, and Assassin's Creed 1 I think came out a little bit earlier than BioShock 1 did, but I could be wrong about that, misremembering. But Assassin's Creed 1 in particular pushes it to a very large extreme, where you're finding 3 or 4 different collectibles, and there's a deep story in it, and then there's skills and upgrades. I think in Assassin's Creed 1, if not 1, then definitely 2. That is just the modern era of video games, to the point where we're starting to feel like maybe it's a little too much for a lot of games. It's getting kind of ridiculous to have RPG elements in games that should just be player versus player shooters, things like that. Yeah, there are definitely some games these days that feel like they are just a little too exhausting, because instead of being a tight 15 or 20 hours, they've been stretched out to 60 hours plus, and that's been done by adding overly grindy RPG mechanics when you didn't need it. Not even say that for like things like the remake of Final Fantasy VII. Is that's a game to me that would be much more appealing if the RPG mechanics were very superficial or non-existent, and you just went into it like a narrative story. You did each battle that was worth playing, once, and then you got rid of all the grindy small battles, or each battle still occurs, but you're not trying to get XP from it, you're just trying to win the battle. Well, let's see what we can do here, if anything. Right. So, what I want to do, let's see what this card does. I'm pretty sure. Special summon this, sacrifice that. It doesn't destroy that. Interesting. Can't be destroyed. So I could do 2 attacks, or I could bring out another one of these. And see, this would be a case where rebuilding this deck and just not living with it the way it was handed to me in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel would make sense, because having potentially the ability to just special summon anything right now would at least give me a small chance. But yeah. As soon as I see a Blue Eyes White Dragon, whatever, Blue Eyes Chaos Dragon on the field, I've lost. There's not a single card in this deck that can destroy it. Moving on to video game news, Scarlet and Violet's second DLC offers a tough Pokemon adventure according to Video Games Chronicle. Which, okay, I guess that maybe makes some sense since this is probably going to be their last bit of DLC. It's funny, you're flying around collecting rings in a Pokemon game. They still are very much pushing the idea of the kids riding the motorcycle Pokemon thing, so every single character is still in pants or shorts or something like that. It'll be interesting to see if that continues, but I suspect it will. I imagine Tears of the Kingdom has, if not a motorcycle, which you can unlock like you can in Breath of the Wild, spoiler, slight spoiler, I imagine it still has some kind of rideable thing. It could be a Pokemon or something. Also noticing the Video Games Chronicles here has changed their website or something, and so all the text is oddly to the side. It may have always been that way, but I'm definitely noticing it. If I make it bigger, that doesn't help. If I make it smaller, that doesn't help. As far as zooming, I use my other plug-in and do that. That doesn't help. That doesn't help. That's one thing about HTML I also would like to see improved upon, is just more controllable elements, but for the player, for the user, the end user. Nope, don't do that. Can I cancel? What's the point of doing this? I guess if you need more room. Oh, darn it. Let's see what happens if I put it sideways like this. Oh, I screwed that up. Pretend like we meant to do that. Yeah, I could definitely see HTML6 including a lot of what would just be almost ad blocker features, where you can much more drastically change the appearance of the web pages based on what the end user wants to see versus what the website wants you to see. Yeah, instead of potentially having to have uBlock Origin installed and several other plugins installed, which is the situation I'm in right now, where it's just a ton of things having to be installed just to try and get it to look very good. YouTube put out on its official blog an early look at the possibilities with AI in music. It makes a lot of sense, certainly, that YouTube might push this idea of AI generated music and just try and ruin the music industry as it stands, considering how much the music industry has been a thorn in the side of YouTube in general. Which, in all fairness, I definitely, as a non-musician, as somebody who has no musical talent whatsoever, could say that the music industry probably does just deserve to be destroyed. It is very similar to YouTube in the sense that there are a select few successful winners that are propagated out and showboated so that everybody thinks they can be a winner when they really can't. True for YouTube, true for music. You have PewDiePie on YouTube, you have Jay-Z in music. We'll just use those as examples as celebrities I can actually name at the moment. But the vast majority in both cases of YouTube and music is that the vast majority of people that engage in those kinds of content creation are not successful at all. They don't ever make a dime. They put in all their whole heart and soul and effort and they get nothing back. Meanwhile, there is, in both cases of music and YouTube, rich oligarch type people who are secretly profiting the vast majority out of it. YouTube getting a cut on everybody's videos and running ads on it. Music production companies getting a cut on everybody's albums and music that they make and getting rich off of it. So if the music industry has to die, or it does die because of AI generated music, it's probably not a problem. And if YouTube died, in all fairness, because of AI generated video, it would suck, certainly for YouTubers like me, but in the end it probably would be a better situation. Like, the dream, and people don't even really pretend to have this dream anymore, was that automation was going to make everybody's life easier and that people wouldn't have to work for a living. Let's see. We really haven't gotten to that level yet. now we have made it so that this one can be summoned because of this, which that's a stupid thing to do. Yep, that was a really stupid thing to do. I just boned that up terribly. That was awful. Video Games Chronicles says Sony suggests more PlayStation Portal stock could be available in the UK this weekend. That's not really what I wanted to talk about. Linus Tech Tips covered the PlayStation Portable, and he's honestly, I think, far too generous around what it is. But he did point out something that had gone over my head and I hadn't caught, in that the PlayStation Portal does not have Bluetooth audio connectivity. And I don't believe it has any kind of Bluetooth controller connectivity either. So, and the features almost certainly are there on the chipset, but they have disabled it so that they can sell their own new line of Bluetooth audio headphones that use a proprietary Sony streaming service, which in all fairness, even the most recent Bluetooth Low Energy 5.3 or whatever they're up to audio probably still isn't amazingly good compared to the likes of some proprietary thing you could create. Another thing he did mention too is that the Wi-Fi connection on the PlayStation Portal was kind of weak. It was doable, but you're getting like 10 megabits per second over Wi-Fi, and you're not really getting as much of a connection as you might have thought you needed. Okay. See if we can turn this around and not screw up this time. This character can attack twice if they destroy a monster. This one would just change the levels. But yeah, I still am very much at the point where I don't think the PlayStation Portal is a good purchase. Inherently, the PlayStation Portal should have been a kind of prototype device that they were selling to roll out the ability to just stream things over your phone, which they already had released features where you could stream things over your phone. So it is a product that is really, really too late. They already have the Backbone controllers for much cheaper. The Backbone controllers should have been released at the same time as the PlayStation Portal, and they should have a new lineup of Sony cell phones that would be a major part of promoting and pushing the idea too, is that like we've got this bigger screen device if you want a bigger screen device, but in reality we know most of you should just be buying a Sony cell phone with the Backbone controller, and could even announced a sale where the Backbone controllers will be given away for free with the purchase of your cell phone. Instead, what they have is this weird release of the PlayStation Portal to then promote a bunch of proprietary headphones that they're not making any good argument as to why you would buy those headphones, particularly since it seems like they may only really connect with the good connection protocol, the proprietary Sony connection protocol, to the Portal. They don't seemingly have a cell phone or any other kind of dongle or adapter to use that connection on anything else. I did see that Valve had hired, I believe it's No Clip, Danny O'Dwyer's production company, although it may actually be a different production company, but Valve had hired them to do that documentary around Half-Life. And so now we have this GameDeveloper.com article here where 15 years later, Chet Felicis Tech dishes on the making of Left 4 Dead, which we've had plenty of dishing around the making of Left 4 Dead already, so this is even more. It is also, I guess, worth pointing out though that I am at a point now where I have completely forgotten the name of the supposedly sold as a spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead that failed pretty miserably. Yeah, I'm trying to think what the name of that even is. I can't. I just cannot think at all. This is a weird choice I've done here. Summoning the exact same type of card so I can get its destroy the face up card ability. I want to draw a card here. I want to activate this ability. What's that gonna do? Should give actual. I think that gives more attack to him. Well, I don't know what that is, but it's gotten me close enough to potentially winning here, which is what I'm looking for. Anyways, yeah, I can't remember the supposed spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 that was really only 2 or 3 people from the 30 or so team. If anything, what we've learned this year is that you cannot succeed by making a game that's a spiritual successor to another game if you don't have the vast majority, if not all of the team on board on that, including the publisher and the rights holder. You're just not going to succeed. Making Callisto Protocol, for instance, when somebody else can also make a game that can just release the original Dead Space instead. And you can't make a spiritual sequel to Left 4 Dead if Valve isn't involved and it isn't called Left 4 Dead 3 or something. Well, we actually got a victory there. And that got the practical exam finally finished. And that got that. And so with that, I think that's probably going to just be my experience with the Ritual Festival. Not particularly good. We're missing out on 50, 100, 300, 400, 700 gems potentially, which is a decent amount. And then probably I would guess about 10, and that would be closer to 18 legacy tickets, which isn't really that much. That's 36 cards that are unimportant cards, and then a title. Like, title's not worth it much either because you can only really highlight 4 of them anyways. Meanwhile, we're also in this weird situation where it's 8 more days until the ranked duel wraps up, so I really don't have a good reason to play ranked duel in the next few streams either, so I may very well end up going back to this if this is here. Otherwise, I may just end up playing casual matches, which maybe I can't play casual matches because of the requirements. We need to get 5 out of 8 questions, so these proficiency tests are getting longer as far as the questions. Let's see if we can answer this. You activate Mystical Space Typhoon targeting Mirror Force change to your opponent's activation. Which of the following is the correct effect resolution? You attack position so field a monster. Nothing happens. Let's see. I'd say nothing happens. Attack position monsters on your field or destroy. What's the name of this card? Let's go something. Let's go with this one. Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. What is the attribute of this card? This is a much newer card. Let's go with Light. Fire. So yeah, we've already lost. Which of the following accessories can be configured in the deck editor? A Master Duel. What does that even mean? 8? 5? I don't even understand what that question was asking. Which card has the effect of forces each player to they only control face-up monsters with one attribute or another? Let's go with there can only be one. Nope, it was goes in match. Well, we'll probably get this on a second. Which of the following effects cannot be activated on the turn you activate right? Pharmacy. Who cares? Let's just pick this. I don't even know that card. Wow. One random guess is correct. What monsters does Mate Laundry Moon transform into when they enter the battle phase? Dragon Maid something. Let's go with this one. Nope, it was that one. Wow. Let's just go with the first question here and not even read it. Okay. So 1 out of 8. Let's try again and see if we can do any better this time. Like, half of these questions may be different. What's the correct attack of 5 materials? I would bet it is either 1500 or 500. Let's go with that. Nope, it was 1000. What's the name of this card? Really, I'm just gonna have to guess. Like, I guess that's probably right. Okay, we got it this time. If we can just remember the answers. Cattle Call. Let's go with Rescue Rabbit. Since we've already seen a question about Rescue Rabbit. What type of card is this? Let's go with Wing... Whoops. I was gonna go with Winged Beast. Clicked the wrong thing. It would have been wrong anyways. Return of the Monarchs. Let's go with Dark Arm Dragon. Three out of 8. Can I get this, or am I literally just gonna have to brute force the questions over and over again? And this really doesn't set up a good thing. This doesn't set up a good situation for the next level of proficiency. Now they're asking solo mode questions. that's an easy question. Let's go with that one. Just a wild guess. Like, there's no way to figuring out what the answers possibly could be if you don't know it. Now, was this Field Scorpion or Nightmare Scorpion? Field Scorpion. And then we know that's Rescue Rabbit. What type of card is this? Pretty sure this is a machine card. 7 out of 8 questions on the 3rd try. Yep. It definitely feels like you're going to just continuously have to brute force the answers as you get to these higher levels, because it's just not realistic that you would have seen most of these cards. That's just not how my experience with Yu-Gi-Oh has been, and it's not how I imagine most people's experiences with Yu-Gi-Oh has been, because you just don't give us enough cards or give us a good reason to play a varied amount of cards. It makes way more sense to just play the same meta deck over and over again, learning those cards and getting really good with your deck that you're playing, but in no way getting any better with anything else. We can see that there is at least a Master Duel Proficiency level 8 past this. There is 5 out of 8 questions that need to be done here, and then there is just a ton of fusion summons, sequence summons, and XYZ summons that need to be done, which synchro summons might be the ones that are a problem in particular. I kind of hope we end at 8. I wouldn't be surprised if we go to at least 9, but yeah. And doing the proficiency is not rewarding us as much. So I need to duel one more time in the festival. So let's go ahead and do that now, so I don't forget about it. But then we will be done with all the ritual festival stuff as far as quests. Then I potentially in the next several days should duel in solo mode, which I could also do that off screen very easily. We're getting back up to having a decent amount of gems, but none of it really helps that much. And all I really need to do is duel here, so it would be nice to win, but even if I did win, that probably wouldn't get me that next 200 gems. I'd have to effectively get like a quick disconnect a couple of times to then motivate me to get 200 more gems. Meanwhile, let's try and burn through the news a little bit quicker. The Nintendo 64 Online is adding Jet Force Gemini in December, or November 30th in Japan. The other part about this, too, to note, is that in Japan, it seems like, and this isn't the story that I clicked on, so we'll see it later. It seems like Nintendo is adding an adult-only section and an adult app, which, yeah, it makes sense. It totally makes sense for that to be there in general from day one, even if you're never going to actually use it. It should be in the programming, in the code to say, hey, we've got an adult section if we ever want to pull the trigger and do that, and we have the underlying foundations. You could certainly see, well, there's your first quick discount. We could certainly see a case where all those adult visual novels, or kind of lewd visual novels that have been allowed on the Nintendo eShop, may have had a box ticked, and at some point they may get moved over to an adult section. And certainly with the next Nintendo console around the corner, it definitely would make sense for them to make some major improvements on their online service and start over from scratch and say, hey, here's how we want it to go. And honestly, the ESRB rating system is bad. There probably needs to be a 4-quadrant questionnaire of what is the age of your kid, and then from that age you would have like a certain level of quality of types of games, but then there should be a question about, do you have a problem with romance, nudity, violence, and gore? And maybe it needs to be a 5-quadrant because language might be another problem. Although, yeah, language would be a very pedantic one in most cases to focus on. If you were going to start rating games based on language, you also would have to question, do you mind if they hear cuss words in the singing of songs? Or, but honestly, I don't know if that really even happens in Switch games. Now, I really wouldn't be surprised if there isn't a single Switch game available even now that has a single F word or damn or darn or anything like that in the song. Works. Nope, that didn't work. Whoops. Probably lost then. Let's quit quickly. Let's lose quickly. The Gears of War franchise narrative director has joined the God of War studios, Sony Santa Monica. Bonnie Jean Ma worked on Gears of War 5 and Gears Tactics. I really wouldn't be surprised if we don't really see another Gears of War game for a long time. The Gears of War storyline has always been a little weird and a little silly. So if you want to tell a slightly more realistic story these days, you are weirdly better off making a God of War game, which has gone very serious, where it was once silly too. See if this works. Particularly with the Microsoft Activision Blizzard merger going through. There is definitely an argument that they would just not focus in on they wouldn't focus on that didn't work. I can't do anything here. Anyways, I lost my train of thought there. Generally, I wouldn't be surprised if we see any focus that would have been towards making a Gears of War game focused now on making a better Call of Duty game, which the Call of Duty series definitely could benefit from that, because let's be honest, the Call of Duty series is being somewhat lackluster lately, and Gears of War is just not going to be anywhere as big of a priority. Let's see what we can do now. See if this works. Toss this one. We want to summon this one. We want to toss this one. Still not really sure what these cards are doing. I think they protect him from being targeted or destroyed. Go ahead and activate this too. Then I can't attack now because I don't have a card to discard. Well, that sucks. So it also seems like he doesn't really have anything he can do either. Gears of War in particular, I think probably is fine if it goes into a hibernating status and does just potentially come out of that hibernation at some point in the distant future as a full-on reboot. Well, it looks like I'm gonna win here. Not in the way I'd really want to, but win nonetheless. Here's the article I was talking about. Nintendo is releasing an adults-only Nintendo Switch app in Japan. The Nintendo 64 18+ Switch Online will launch alongside GoldenEye and Jet Force Gemini, which maybe that means that there's something in GoldenEye or Jet Force Gemini that they feel like should be in the 18+ section. Or maybe this is just coming out with no actual adults-only games being listed. Nintendo users will be required to download and launch a separate app in order to play the two classic Rare titles. This drastic circumvention is almost certainly due to Japan's age rating requirements. Both GoldenEye and Jet Force Gemini is rated Z in Japan, which means they are banned from sale to any persons under the age of 18. Z is the 0 rating regulated by the Japanese government and requires titles to be displayed separately from other software and age verification on purchase. I didn't realize that 0 was run by the actual Japanese government, so it is literally the definition of censorship in that case, instead of technically the definition of censorship like the ESRB. So far, though, it doesn't seem like there's a real effort here to have like adult games, sex games in the 18 plus section, which weirdly, I guess they have not had to do that because the other adult games probably didn't have a 0 rating at all, if I was to guess. One more win would get me 50 gems, and then it would be 2 more wins after that. I guess we'll just keep pushing it up. But yeah, it definitely doesn't feel like Jet Force Gemini really is that extreme. You have some legs and some arms showing here, but by Japanese standards, these are very tame images, and there's not really any lifelike violence or gore in GoldenEye. So the bigger question would be just why were these rated Z in the first place? And they probably were just rated Z because of the time they were originally released many years ago, which also potentially highlights a problem of shifting standards and age ratings not really being updated. There definitely was a story I saw, and it's not very video game related, but a fairly popular, I think it was kind of like a YouTube competitor in Japan, some video streaming service, got mad at MasterCard because MasterCard demanded that one of the videos on the streaming service be taken down. The title of the video was something along the lines of torturing this stray kitten, which sounds awful, but the actual video was somebody very nicely and caring for the stray kitten, and it was just a clickbait title. And MasterCard apparently only looked at the title and demanded the video being taken down. There have been several instances of banks and like financial institutions directly trying to enforce a level of censorship on the companies they are servicing, when they really should be a background service and not making any kind of demands like that at all. But yeah, same thing is happening in the West too, in that certain banks are refusing to fund or process transactions from adult sites. And it always strikes me, kind of when you see a banking institution doing this, that it is very much being done from a cynical point of view, just to raise their social credit score, or to perhaps enforce puritanical values just to make people miserable. Like, it doesn't... If corporations are people, I don't think that there are moral corporations out there. That was stupid. Oh, that was really dumb. Alright, well, whatever. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to that. So weirdly, not that I meant to do it, I think I actually did maybe do something helpful here, because now this can't be countered, or this might be able to be countered. And there's nothing more I can do. I did see an article, by the way, that it talked about how banks and credit card processing companies have been federally mandated to charge at least 26 cents per transaction plus a percentage on top of that, and that the Federal Reserve in the United States is thinking about lowering that rate, and banks obviously are not happy about that, but that potentially may show that we start to see even lower than 33-cent games on Steam. For the most part, though, it's unlikely that that's going to really trickle down. Very few websites are adding an extra 30 cents onto the price. You're not buying something for... Wow, an Exodia win. You don't get to see that very often. Particularly when you're playing in the Ritual Festival, and that is not a ritual summoned monster. I'd inherently assume there's something wrong with that strategy, though. You can't really just play a deck that would always win on the second or third turn with an Exodia summon. I definitely would play a deck that could just win with an Exodia win or something like that. Second turn over and over again, regardless of how annoying that would be. It may, once again I've done it wrong. It may very well be a case though where I should have grabbed the other ritual card. It may very well be a case though that now that Nintendo has this 18+ app separate out, that was the thing that pushed Nintendo potentially into really embracing an adult section, and so we may fairly quickly start to see an adult section get flooded on Nintendo Switch Online, although I imagine Nintendo wants to highlight its own games first and foremost, and then would slowly trickle in adult games. But yeah, they really have no reason to say no now, since they were forced to do it. Anyways. Video Game Chronicles says a Pokemon 16-foot Christmas tree is going to be erected in London, which, yeah, either I'm not following anybody that talks about like the Pokemon store in New York, Manhattan, or they're just not doing anything like that. The Thanksgiving Day parade will probably happen, and there will be a Pikachu float there, as there has been for many years. But it does definitely feel like there seems to be more effort being put in the UK and London to promote the Pokemon, or it's just a case of Video Game Chronicles are kind of obsessed about Pokemon. But yeah. Of course, it is also a pretty good year to not make a Pokemon push, since the Pokemon games aren't that good. Okay, so we absolutely need this. Attribute this. Summon this. We need this to go and destroy this quickly. Let's do it again. Doesn't feel like I'm really gonna be able to get enough victories to get up there. Does definitely feel like it would just be a struggle. Sony is being sued over a 7.9 billion. Is being sued for 7.9 billion over the UK PlayStation Store pricing. Players in the UK claim Sony has unfairly jacked up the PlayStation Store prices and created a monopoly, other preventing third-party retailers and selling digital games, which is an interesting argument that might actually work in the UK, in that maybe if you're making the maker of a platform, maybe you should be forced to allow other people to sell games and launch games and sideload games onto your onto the platform. Like, it's an interesting idea, certainly. Like, should the Apple Store, the Apple iOS Apple Store, have to allow other stores like the Google Play Store? Should the Google phones allow the Apple Store? Should each of them allow very smaller storefronts? There definitely are some niche storefronts that are selling niche games, usually adult games, again, that would like to have their own attempt at competing. Versus the Apple Store, the Google Store. Yeah, PlayStation Store on an Xbox console, Xbox Store on a PlayStation console. That doesn't sound terrible. Nintendo storefront on an Xbox or a PlayStation console. It's not a terrible idea. And it kind of does sound fair, too, to say, hey, you know what, you were the maker of the platform, therefore you cannot have a walled garden. Of course, these same kind of lawsuits and arguments have been tried to push before, and I don't think they've really succeeded so far. So I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't succeed any better. And I could certainly see arguments against it too, and that you may just be putting a massive extra burden on a product designer that now has storefronts that may just be loading illegal ROMs or games for free onto your platform. But honestly, even that level of competition, even if it was unfair competition, where there were storefronts just giving free ROMs of brand new PlayStation 5 games, that kind of competition probably should happen, or something not as extreme as that should happen, to keep the price down on video games, because right now there is just nothing stopping the prices of video games going up and up and up, regardless of whether it's just keeping up with inflation or not. There's none of that market competition pressure that people love to talk about in capitalism to keep the prices down, which, by the way, that has never in my lifetime actually happened. I've never seen actual competition lower the price of anything to any significant amount. Gasoline is perhaps the closest thing, and you mostly get a few pennies off of a $3 or $4 a gallon gas price. There are similar gadgets and cheap Chinese garbage on Amazon that does have some competition, and that has somewhat lowered the prices, but mostly it's just lowered the quality significantly more than lowered the prices. Moving on, A Plague Tale Requiem scurries to 300 million players. Not 300 million, 3 million. That's a big mistake to make. Which I'd say it feels like it took a long time to get to that point. Yeah, apparently they're working on a live-action TV series next. But yeah, it doesn't feel like there's as much mainstream video game journalists singing the praises of Plague Tale Requiem as they were singing the praises of Plague Tale, the original game, not the sequel. Go ahead and grab this one instead. I think in every way this card is actually worse than the other card. Let's see how this goes. I really don't think this was much of a video game story at all, but Sam Altman apparently returned as OpenAI CEO days after being ousted. It definitely seemed like Microsoft was willing to hire him on, but they didn't apparently sign the contract. It seemed like somewhere, I think I heard a number like 500 out of maybe 900 employees were mentally prepared to quit and stick with Altman, which, boy, does that show that he is a rather beloved boss, which that's a rarity. But yeah, it definitely seems like it's just been all around. Meanwhile, OpenAI is pretty much still in the exact same position it was at the beginning of this, although confidence in it should be fairly shaken, or at least confidence in the board should be fairly shaken. I wouldn't be surprised if the non-profit board that oversees OpenAI and was capping the potential profits it could make is ousted, and in the long run, OpenAI just starts to sell out and try to make itself way more profit than what it's being limited to now. But as far as OpenAI goes, no major improvement or anything has happened to it, and yeah, the average person, including me, should just not care one bit as far as what the who the CEO is of OpenAI. And we are definitely at the level where AI in general is not really that close to playing any part in video games. It's just not going to be a thing. It'll be a generation or two before we get to that level. The GameDeveloper.com writing 2 articles here, however, about it. The Sam Altman saga cast a shadow on quote-unquote ethical AI. Yeah, there's just no real ethics in AI, and anybody that's claiming ethical AI is basically saying clean coal. It's just a branding thing. Like, we don't know even really what the ethics would look like or what they would be if you could do ethical AI, but there's not really going to be any ethics in any kind of business unless it's just incredibly strictly regulated by the governments, and the US government's not going to do that. They haven't done it with any other emerging industry at all. we're still talking about the ethics and don't have a solution as far as just having automated cars drive themselves. Like, still there's no defined example of should you run over the old woman or the young man if you have to run over somebody. In the trolley problem type situations. And if anything, I think it's probably more of a situation where there will never be any kind of defined, set in stone ethics. We joke or write sci-fi stories about the 3 laws of robotics and things like that, but I bet it just is something that people forget about and stop talking about. GameDeveloper.com also has an article here. Rockstar has removed social club branding ahead of the GTA 6 reveal, which maybe that means something, maybe it doesn't, maybe they'll just have a different branding on it. I wouldn't be surprised if they definitely try to de-emphasize any kind of social club. I think the social club, though, that they call it really has more to do with the casino and gambling of GTA Online. I don't think there is a real social service there where you get together with friends and play together. And honestly, you don't need a special brand for that. There's just an assumption that the next GTA game would allow you to play in some level with your friends and some co-op. It'd be very weird if GTA 6 was a fully single-player experience. Unfortunately, I'm just not that interested in GTA 6, whatever it's going to be, at the moment, to even really read the article and care. RoboCop Rogue City has become Nacon's best ever game launch, which probably is more of a testament to just how terrible Nacon's other launches have been. I have seen some good reception around RoboCop Rogue City, but it definitely doesn't strike me as a game that a lot of people are going to buy and play. I think RoboCop in a lot of ways is very much like Felix the Cat, in that it is just an old-fashioned thing that old people may have some nostalgia for, but there isn't any new RoboCop movies. They never made a RoboCop cartoon, to my knowledge. There just wasn't anything like that to push it forward. They made the RoboCop rebooted movie a few years ago, but before that it was just RoboCop 1, 2, and 3. Maybe they made even a 4th movie. Things were definitely different back in those days when you could just make a fairly cheap movie and then make even cheaper sequels and get enough people to go to the theaters. Now it's so expensive to go to a theater, there's just not a lot of desire to see a movie that isn't going to be a big AAA, huge budget Marvel movie. Rockstar apparently also axed an agent for, quote, distracting from Grand GTA 5's development. The would-be PlayStation 3 exclusive agent was reportedly cutting into development on what the would-be GTA Auto 5 and Rockstar game. And for Rockstar, something had to give. So they were making a game called Agent? Yeah, I guess that was the case. This looks very much kind of like Payday. And then they shut it down. So this is new news about an old game, or development of an old game a long time ago. And that definitely, I think, speaks to the amount of work Rockstar can do, or at least the amount of work Rockstar wants to do. There is a fairly large problem, it seems here, in that Rockstar seems a little bit lazy. I can't really do anything. I can attack that and destroy it, and that's it. But yeah, it definitely makes some sense if you were going to keep churning out more games, which Rockstar obviously in its history has not churned out enough games for its long life. It would make sense to make a GTA style game, but you're a FBI agent or something, some kind of, I assume, FBI. So you could run around and commandeer cars instead of stealing cars. You could shoot bad guys instead of just shooting random civilians. You could do pretty much the exact same actions in this exact same area, but it would let the writers in particular say, hey, here's a mission that makes sense if you're a good guy, here's a mission that makes sense if you're a bad guy. We'll write twice as many missions, and then we'll make 2 games in the exact same landscape, in the exact same game engine. But yeah, they didn't do that. Best case scenario, they made Red Dead Redemption instead in a completely different map. And you're kind of a bad guy in that case. Well, kind of a good guy in that case, but don't inherently have to be a good guy in Red Dead games, to my understanding. The National Video Game Museum also wanted to say they were closed for Thanksgiving but open for Black Friday, and so they've got some pictures here of their displays. It really seems weird that this is how they've chosen to display what life would have been like back in the days of having, I think this is a ColecoVision game, and then this may be a VCR on here, or this may be another game console. Just wood paneling, and honestly the rugs should probably be more shaggy than they are for this time. And I don't know if you're really allowed to get on these stages and touch things or not, but it is just weird that they make these kind of dioramas. It definitely speaks to a set decorator being allowed to really play on people's nostalgia, and I think that works fairly well. Although for young kids, they're going to look at this and just say, boy is this weird, boy does this not look like my room, or like anybody's room that I've seen. Inherently, I don't know if there are that many people that even bother to hang up anything on the walls, let alone massive amounts of posters and pendants and things like that. And some of the stuff on the walls, this lamp, this furniture, this TV, it may be as much a museum piece as the video game console, which is really not even taking a major point, taking up a major part of the image. Because all that stuff would be very old, unless they're all just reproductions, which even that is somewhat unlikely to be the case. Let's see if any of the refurbished Steam Decks are in stock. Nope. None of them are in stock. I really should probably just jump on the possibility if there's anything there to see or purchase, like regardless of what model it is or whatever, just get a cheap Steam Deck. It's just too expensive to justify buying the OLED version. Like, if I bought it for myself, then I really would be cutting into buying video games, and I prefer to just own video games first and foremost. The charts, let's get these charts actually in the right order. Seem like you might have a few more higher numbers today of people playing. That certainly wouldn't make sense. This game, Lethal Company, getting a lot of attention, although notably I don't think I've even seen it on my chart, so I think my chart is totally broken and I just don't have time to fix it at this point. But yeah, you get to the 12th position and you're below 100,000 players in your 24-hour peak. But I do suspect we will see the numbers peak up over Thanksgiving, since everybody would have time off. Although a lot of people won't have free time, generally speaking. Here's Lethal Company showing up and going higher and higher. And yeah, here we're consistently not getting all the data that we should be getting. The Apex Legends numbers are just going lower and lower. Still, all the data points that I have sampled going back to 9.16 are here. Though. So the autumn sale is happening, and we can see a full image here at the top, and that is leading towards very much 100% no blue in the background. We have the Steam Awards to potentially look at, and then you have a whole bunch of games being promoted and on sale, although not really too much to promote as far as brand new games. Instead, it's pushing Starfield, which is now down to mixed in reviews on Steam, or Cyberpunk, which is up to very positive on Steam. But a lot of these games are fairly old. There's no major AAA game out at the moment that has been out for a while, or that just came out, not has been out for a while. I meant to say the exact opposite of that. They are promoting categories more, and that's probably the better thing to do. Really, it's just getting down to a point where most people, depending on when you started your journey of buying games on Steam, most people are fairly saturated as far as games. And over the past 12 months, if I was to try and find a list of relatively new games to buy, I would struggle. There's some games from slightly over 12 months ago. This was 2021, that at $10 makes for a good deal. Then there's adult games showing up on my storefront here because I've allowed that, but the vast majority of people have not clicked that tab, so they wouldn't see that. It does speak to, yes, a good selling adult game will get promoted. This, I think it may be an adult game too, but only if you click the tab. And arguably, I would like to be prompted and asked every time I go to Steam anyways. Like a 24-hour cookie potentially is as much as I would want, as far as, hey, you've in the past wanted to see adult games, do you want to see it for the next 24 hours, for the next hour? Or, hey, you've logged in on a different PC, do you want to see it on this specific PC? Because there definitely are situations here where I might want adult content on my personal computer, but I don't potentially want to browse adult games on my cell phone in public or on a tablet, something different. That's another thing I've thought about buying for this Black Friday. Is my tablet's battery is pretty shot at this point. So it would be kind of nice. Let's just go ahead and end and lose. It would be kind of nice to get a new tablet, but there's a minimum of $100 to $180 you're going to spend on a decent tablet, which is kind of expensive too. Although in all fairness, I'd spend more trying to replace the battery. The hope is to hold out until the EU requires everybody to have replaceable batteries in devices, and then buy a tablet that has a replaceable battery, user serviceable replaceable batteries, and hope that fixes, gives me a tablet that could last a good 10 years or longer for as little as I use it. Scrolling down here, though, it definitely doesn't feel like there's anything. Let's just reload the page. Yeah, that doesn't work either, does it? Yeah, nothing for them to really promote. And they're calling this the Autumn Festival instead of a Fall Festival, which is a odd phrase to use in my book, but whatever. I guess technically we might be in autumn, but they're not calling it the Steam Winter Sale, so I assume that this is not particularly going to be a huge big sale with anything special, but it's been years, frankly, since there has been any kind of big sale with any kind of surprises or mini games. I feel like they probably have decided it's not worth making mini games or giving away freebies, because that was probably just wasting somebody's time, some developer, some intern's time. So for the Steam Awards, we have 11 categories: a Game of the Year Award, VR Game of the Year Award, Labor of Love Award, Best Game on Steam Deck Award, Better with Friends Award, Outstanding Visual Style Award, Most Innovative Game Award, Best Game You Suck At Award, Best Soundtrack Award, Outstanding Story Rich Award, and Sit Back and Relax Award. Doing all of these will give you a badge, and that gives you XP to raise your level for no real reason these days. It feels like 11 categories here is somewhere around 4 extra categories compared to what we've seen in the past, where it definitely has felt like there's only been about 6 categories before, but almost all of these categories are the same old categories, and there's really no prestige here as far as what to pick. Seems to me like they are trying to limit you down to playing just things you've played, which noticeably here, I definitely would not give the Game of the Year award to Marvel Snap or Magic Arena, and those are the apparently only the 2 games that I've even played, whereas this one here makes a lot of sense. Let's start with Resident Evil 4 as your nomination. Of course, Baldur's Gate 3 is more recent and probably more deserving, so let's actually nominate that. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense, as Baldur's Gate 3 is definitely this. As far as VR games here, what would even be an argument? This is new, certainly, to allow the developers to make an argument and make their own post. I think maybe Breachers might be the one to pick. If I was just gonna randomly pick something. Yeah, let's give it to a racing game, which probably won't. Labor of Love Award. These are games I actually played, which I'll do my joke renomination of. Let's see, what is it even called? Time clickers. Time click. There you go. We'll just nominate that again. As far as Labor of Love joke. Best game on Steam Deck. Most people don't have a Steam Deck, so how are you gonna make a vote here? And if you want the badge, I suspect you have to vote and nominate something for each category, which means you probably are going to just have to make up a guess as far as what game would be best on Steam Deck. Again, I could do Baldur's Gate, but let's go with Dave the Diver on that category. I'm wasting time here doing this on screen. Anyways, well, the good news is I'm not gonna go through my wish list and shop on screen, but I may very well do that just to see, just to get a better idea. Better with Friends award. Let's see. This looks like an adult game. It is an adult game. Interesting. Again, I imagine that's not being shown if you haven't clicked it. You could go with Sons of the Forest. Some of these games I don't inherently think, or even that multiplier. Let's go Baldur's Gate 3 though. I'm not going to give it to Football Club 24 or Diablo 4, so now let's go with actually Lethal Company. That almost certainly is the better one to go with. Outstanding visuals. Again, I've really only played 2 games from this year, so that's not super crazy though. A lot of these games also don't feel like they were actually released this year, but maybe they were. Cocoon, Wizard with a Gun, Portal, Sonic Superstars. There you go. Let's go Atelier, Ryza 3. Sure, why not? Kind of doesn't matter who you nominate, because your nominations, it is seemingly just a direct vote. So whatever's most popular is going to win, which is fine. Most innovative gameplay award. Yeah, Forspoken actually trying to get a nomination there. Yeah, right. I like the idea though that publishers and developers really only have this much influence, and it really is down to a popular vote. The problem here is though, I really would like to see some level of prestige added. What is this? Most innovative gameplay award? Oh, I'll see. Resident Evil 4 can win there. Best Game You Suck At award. It is a smaller group here, though, of what's being suggested. Let's go with Sifu, just because I don't care. Best soundtrack in particular is going to be very difficult if you haven't actually played the games. River City Girls might be an argument, but why not High Five Rush instead? Yeah, might as well just pick things that might actually win instead of voting for things you actually care about. Outstanding Story Rich Game Award. Fatal Frame. It might be interesting to do Fatal Frame. Homebody. This is seemingly one of the few places where you can. Let's go Taos Principle 2. You can potentially nominate smaller things. I feel like the website here too has also improved somewhat here, in that you're not getting taken away from the game. It's interesting. Popular and recommended, including Lewd Gem. Here, the Bees developer doesn't deserve awards. Or Cat's hidden object game developer. Alright, and so of all the options here, without seeking out a different game, let's do that one just to be done. So we nominated at least one game, we nominated the game in each category, we played a game, we nominated, and then we need to review and update a game I nominated. So I will do all of that by going back to Time Clickers and just launching it and then updating the review. The updating the review and playing the game aspects really does not mean anything, though. Like, it is just this arbitrary requirement. So yeah, you have a democratic vote there. Arguably, it should be more of a more categories in general, but 11 is probably about as many as anybody can handle, even in the aspect of just nominating games. I was running out of attention span fairly quickly there. So then they'll have the voting based on who gets the most nominations, and then you get to vote a second time. So effectively we're kind of caucusing right now to figure out who the top contenders would be in the nominations, who would get the nominations, and then we're having the actual election vote later on. And all they really need to do, I would say, is just get somebody to present a presentation, a live stream or something. Really wouldn't be that hard. Just have a annual event where you invite all the nominees to a fancy dinner and then do a live stream presentation for that. And then have some kind of have the lady who seems to be now the face of Valve, or is possibly going to be the face of Valve, just have her become the annual presenter of the Steam Awards. Anyways, let's move on. We've talked about some of this, like Prince of Persia Remake passing an important milestone. A new Call of Duty Black Ops Gulf War details have seemingly leaked, according to Video Games Chronicle. Again, my interstitial image did not pop up. A new South Park Snow Day trailer shows off the first gameplay, if you want to check that out. I don't think the South Park Snow Day game seemed anywhere as interesting though, because it's not going to be like Stick of Truth where it's an RPG game and a fairly long experience. Steam's autumn sale is now live, featuring quote thousands of discounts. Promotion is running until November 28th, so we've got about 7 days. They've highlighted some big AAA games that are moderately discounted at 30% off. Starfield's 20% off. Starfield's a very bad candidate to purchase. There's just no reason to buy it now. All DuelSense PS5 controller colors are on sale in the UK for Black Friday. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is already on sale in the US for Black Friday deals. Walmart has knocked off $10 off the price of the new game. Let's see if this works. Walmart Plus membership includes early access to its Black Friday sales starting today. The Walmart Plus membership as a concept being compared to like an Amazon Prime membership kind of falls down pretty poorly. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to shop online at Walmart. Why support the old monopolist instead of the new monopolist of Amazon? Plus, you don't get a video streaming service. It would make a lot of sense if Walmart Plus was either a really cheap membership, which it might be. I don't even know how much it costs. But if it came with a free Hulu subscription or something like that, that could work fairly nicely. Overall, though, I'm not seeing a lot of sales for anything that is that amazing. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 has been delayed until the second half of 2024. You know what, let's just start on this side and that'll speed this process up. If I move the tabs that I'm selecting. Starfield's latest update adds DLSS support on PC. Switch 2's DLSS upscaling might not be as powerful as hoped, it's been claimed. If true, it would mean the upscaling could be limited to 1080p or 1440. Which, yeah, if it's a portable device, I wouldn't be surprised if they are barely making a slight improvement from the 720 screen you have on a Switch to just up to 1080p. And arguably, for the size of the screen, for as close as it is to your face, 1080p is very acceptable. Even getting up to 1440p for the size of the screen is a little extreme. We want, frankly, better graphics and just a processor that can handle other games and make a third-party game look decent. I really think you're asking way too much if you're looking for a 2K or 4K monitor on a Switch 2, unless you're willing to pay a couple $1,000s for it. Honestly, I don't know if they even make panels that would be of that size, be of that quality. Better, brighter graphics, less etched glass so you don't have reflections on it. All of that could be way more valuable for less money. The Simpsons Hit and Run publisher said no to a deal to make 5 more Simpsons games. The game's producer said Vivendi's decision also led to Hit and Run 2's cancellation. Well, that would have been weird, certainly, but it probably was a bad mistake. Yeah, Simpsons back in the day certainly would have been popular enough that making 5 more Simpson games would have been a big commitment, but not a terrible idea. You say yes to that kind of deal, then you make Hit and Run 2, it sells a little bit less, and at that point maybe the publisher wants to back out and doesn't really want to fund it. It'd be very crazy for a publisher to actually stick to a 5 more Simpson game deal unless they just sold like hotcakes. People definitely have this love for Hit and Run when it's not even really that good of a game. So by the time they made a sequel, one would think it might be even better game. Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition announced. Boxed PS5 versions won't include the Phantom Liberty on the disc, though. The game engine Game Maker is now free for non-commercial use. That's an interesting twist. Indie devs can pay a one-time fee of $99 to sell their game instead of a subscription, which is interesting, although not a lot of people talking about they were moving over to Game Maker. It is also worth pointing out, though, the Game Maker, unless I'm completely confused, is just a variation on RPG Maker. I wonder if it's a $99 fee to sell their game per game, though. Because what effectively, if it was per game, it would be, is that you can now sell your game by paying $100 to these people and then paying $100 to Valve to be a Steam Direct listing on Steam. So then you're $200 into it, so now you have to sell a bunch of copies potentially to make $200 of profit, which probably was less than what you had to sell if you were sticking to a subscription this whole time. Although arguably it also opens up the door that somebody pays $99, uses Game Maker to make one game, and then decides to use a different engine to make their next game because they're no longer paying this subscription fee that they were already committed to. Fortnite's Big Bang event has been announced, and leaks suggest it will feature Eminem, Lego, rhythm, and racing modes, which I think continues a long history of Fortnite just not really knowing what age group it's targeting. Like, Eminem, still probably not for little kids. I wouldn't want a 14-year-old spouting off Eminem lyrics, but 16, 17-year-old probably would be fine. But Lego is probably for 12-year-olds and younger for the most part. Rhythm and racing modes can also be all over the place. Yeah. It definitely just highlights that Fortnite is this weird, inconsistent, what people perceive as a kid's game, and yet it really isn't a kid's game, and yet it targets kids with Lego, but then it also targets older teenagers with Eminem, and yeah, there's just no consistent thought there. I already talked about the PlayStation Portal. This is probably the last time I'll ever talk about the PlayStation Portal. Epic Games Store launches a Black Friday sale, including Alan Wake 2 for $34 or £27. Wow, that's the comparison there. I did not realize the pound was that much worse than the US dollar. Activision claims Modern Warfare 3 is seeing record engagement levels for the trilogy, which, okay. Sony is set to face a $5 billion class action lawsuit over PlayStation Store prices. We talked about that. Jet Force Gemini coming to the Nintendo 64. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is reportedly still in development at Saber Interactive, which this is the exact opposite of what Jeff Grubb was claiming. It's being worked on by at least 2 developers at Saber Interactive. Yeah, which, without diving deeper into it, it does definitely feel like this is yet another article that just smacks into the face of the bombastious claims Jeff Grubb sometimes makes, and then other people report as if he is a good source, or he has good sources. Frankly, the way he speaks and the way he reports in particular is just crazy. To say absolutely nobody anywhere is working on Knights of the Republic can be easily proven wrong by Saber Interactive putting 2 interns on the project and then coming back with a response saying, no, we've got at least 2 developers working on it. Like, could have just been one intern working on it, and then that would make his claim false. Where he could have said he could have phrased it in a way to say, it appears that there are very few people working on Knights of the Republic, or Knights of the Republic remake is not high priority. Doesn't have many developers. You could add some wiggle room there, certainly, as far as what you claimed, instead of saying exactly 0. We already talked about the narrative director moving over to God of War Studio. Although we say God of War Studio, Sony is Santa Monica, but I wouldn't be 100% surprised if they're actually working on a different game that is not in the God of War series. I kind of don't know the ending of the current of God of War Ragnarok, so that may just have been the end of the series anyways. So there may not be a lot more that can be done. Diablo 4 is free to play on Steam this for the next week, and it's on sale for 40% off if you like it. I don't think too many people should engage with it. It's just not developed well. Hideo Kojima is showing off a Wonka Xbox with Timothy Chalamet visiting Kojima Productions. So it's just like a custom skin with the Wonka logo for the new Wonka movie prequel to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory book movie, which I don't think will probably be much of anything. It's kind of ridiculous that Kojima Productions seems to have this entire room that's mirrored and white. Seems fairly crazy. And definitely feels like Kojima is potentially just wasting funds developing an all white room. But yeah, it also definitely feels like Kojima's doing his thing, trying to rub elbows with celebrities. I don't know anything really about Timothy Chalamet, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's maybe going to be the next big kind of crazy actor, doing the crazier roles. Face actor who emotes a lot more than most actors do these days. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. Nintendo of America launched its Black Friday digital game sales. Hogwarts Legacy returns to the top of the UK physical charts following the Switch release. And the Pokemon CEO wants to keep the series going for hundreds of years, quote unquote, which is also, again, a extreme statement to make, but for Pokemon, it's doable, certainly. You could just keep it going by making something every now and then. And over the time scale of hundreds of years, if you took 20 years off, that's not that big of a break. And there's my interstitial thing. It is consistently in the wrong place, so I probably just need to move it. And then that brings us to the Komatsu articles, which again I'll just start on the left side and work my way back to the right. Focus Entertainment and the Plague Tale developer Asbo Studio renew a collaboration for another existing project, which, okay, good news. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 delayed to the second half of 2024. We talked about that, although I should have probably checked to see if it had a Steam link. Focus Entertainment and Dreamscape developer Afterburn Studio announces a new partnership for a new IP. So we're getting announcements with very little information. Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown has sales of topped 5 million, so 2 million more than the Plague Tale Requiem, which I would have flipped it the other way. Let's see if this game is on the wish list. It is already on the wish list even. Jet Force Gemini we talked about. A 2.5D turn-based RPG, Tales of Three Kingdoms: The Mortal World, has been announced for PC. Let's see. And that means I need to jump back over here. Pinball M launches November 3rd with The Thing Pinball. Persona 3 Reload Aegis trailers available. The Famitsu review scores for issue 1825. Gangs of Sherwood getting 30 out of 40. Gravity Circuit getting 32 out of 40. Robocop Rogue City getting 32 out of 40. And Wizard with a Gun getting 32 out of 40. So very average as far as the releases. Although noticeably no big names really either for that week. Tokyo Chronos and Alt Deus Beyond Chronos Twin Pack has been announced for the Switch. Is this in Japan or worldwide? Guess it's probably worldwide. Class of Heroes 1 and 2 Complete Edition has been announced for the PS5, Switch, and PC, which seems like this is a case where the PC games are being sold separately. Class of Heroes 1 looks like a fairly uninteresting RPG dungeon crawler, but I'll give it a follow anyways. There's possibly something in this art style that might be interesting enough, but I doubt it. And then Class of Heroes 2 Remastered looks like it's barely improved at all from Class of Heroes 1. And I would say we are in a weird situation where it's no longer acceptable for a developer, either an already established developer or a new developer, to just straight up try and make yet another new dungeon crawler series with it not really having the level of polish that any dungeon crawler at this point should have. Although dungeon crawlers in general are not targeted towards the West. They're things that are popular in Japan, or at least things people think are popular in Japan. And so maybe messing with the visuals or spending more effort on it doesn't make sense to the target audience. Let's see. Cyberpunk Ultimate Edition launches December 5th for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. This article being updated to say that Phantom Liberty is not included. The JoJo's Bizarre Adventure character Wonder of You reveal trailer. I'm going backwards, so some of these articles are going to be older and then we're going to move into the newer ones. Hawk for PC launches in early access November 30th. Let's see if this one is already on the fall list. Yes, it is. Go Hell Go, and then Tsuki Toshi Teko launches March 28th in Japan. I imagine this might be based off of like a light novel that has a ridiculously long title that's been shortened. They call it a Rapid Descent RPG. It's going to launch on PS4, Switch, and PC. We can see the reversible image has two ladies in bikinis, anime girls in bikinis with what look like the kinds of robes you would wear at a shrine. So they might be shrine maidens. And looking at the thumbnail here, it seems like there's probably several anime girls you're playing with on your team. Let's go ahead and risk it. I imagine there's not anything too extreme here, as far as just try to get a better idea of what the game would look like. Although this may very well just be showing off the characters and nothing else. yeah, I'm not really seeing any of the RPG scenes. All I'm seeing is kind of the intro sequence, so who knows what that really would look like when you're actually playing the game versus the cutscenes. A virtual reality action adventure game called Arcane Age has been announced for the PSVR 2 and Steam VR. Which I guess if I click Steam VR, that will take me to the page. Looks very polished and pretty, which has been a consistent problem overall with VR games, is that the visuals are fairly lackluster. But without a VR headset, who knows how it actually plays and if it plays well. Arcadian Atlas is coming to the PS4 and PS5, Xbox One and Series, and Switch on November 30th. Let's see if we've got a Steam link here. Noticeably, a lot of these things are only linked to Steam when the articles first come out. Sonic Dream Team, the smartphone game, has an opening animation on Gematsu if you want to check that out. Then we had already talked about this game. River Tales Stronger Together for PC launches December 14th. I'm a little surprised to see anything planning on releasing this year if you're going to make an announcement. Looks like this might be a cutesy, kid-friendly 3D platforming game, which I'm always hopeful when I see a 3D platforming game like Mario 64, but none of them ever really do satisfy me. Garden Life, a cozy simulator, launches February 22nd for the PS4 and 5, Xbox One and Series, PC later, and then later for the Switch in 2024. Do we have a Steam link? No, we don't. We don't have a link to Steam, not to be confused with the hardware called the Steam Link, which nobody bought, and noticeably they probably sold all of those and they're never going to make any more. SpongeBob SquarePants: The Cosmic Shake is coming to iOS and Android on December 12th. One Piece Pirate Warriors 4 DLC characters Uta has been announced. There is a argument, I guess, to potentially once again make a Steam Link and try and sell that, except for this time use the internals of the Steam Deck. You could take, if you have a bunch of motherboards sitting around, take the components of the Steam Deck and connect it to, put it in a box without a screen, without all the controllers and inputs and touchpads, and then sell it as a Steam Link. But I doubt they would bother to do that since the Steam Link already kind of failed as a concept. But we may very well see something like that, in the same way that the Switch 2 might just be much closer to an Xbox Series X that plugs into a TV. Like, until we can get really, really cheap 3D glasses to wear instead, TVs are still going to be a thing in people's houses to some extent. Every house is going to likely have at least one TV. And so docking your computer, your Steam Deck, to a TV makes some sense still. Donpachi Blissful Death Reincarnation adds Donpachi 3. I think this is a shoot 'em up series. No? Yes? Shoot 'em up series? I was not expecting these anime girls to be so prominent. This is one of those presentations too where they're mostly going to sit at a table and talk to people in Japanese for a very long amount of time. So it is a shoot 'em up game. It just happens to every now and then show off lady characters flying the planes, I assume. Okay. Shadow Gambit, The Cursed Crew, 2 DLC expansions will launch in December 6th. The final release from Me Games. How well is this game being received so far? Being received very well, to the point where I should definitely put this on the wish list and take it off the falling list, particularly since the fall list cleanup is not really working either. All my macros are breaking. Macros breaking can be excused somewhat in that the people are changing the website slightly, and that's why they're breaking. Whereas if I was making a program and none of the other programming code that the program it was working with was changing, there would be no reason for a program that did work to stop working. Tekken 8 has a Leo gameplay trailer if you want to check that out on Gamatsu. And then Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash characters trailer for these 3 characters is available. I do know that this Jujutsu Kaisen manga seems to still be going on, so this may just be the new, very well received manga / anime, the new competitor to something like Bleach, which is no longer making manga episodes. I wouldn't be surprised if it is releasing in something like Shonen Jump, although it seems to me like it's releasing individually as its own thing. Tsukihime, A Piece of Blue Glass Moon, launches in the summer of 2024 in the West. This was one visual novel that we saw a lot of hype for, a little bit more than normal, and a lot of talk about it. So it coming over to the West seems to indicate that there is enough success there to justify doing that. Although weirdly, it is also coming to the PS4 and the Switch only, not PC, and not the PS5, which we're still seeing that be a fairly large trend for smaller games, visual novels in particular, as far as just why would you make a PS5 version exclusive of a visual novel when you're just not going to need that level of power. Although I'd say even non-visual novel games, a significant portion of them really don't need the power of a PlayStation 5. And that may very well just become a separating point, is that we'll see more and more people playing games on the Switch or the Steam Deck, and then fewer and fewer AAA super demanding visual games to justify owning a console like a PS5 or an Xbox Series X, particularly if the prices continue to go up and the number of games continues to go down as far as highly demanding games. South Park Snow Day gameplay trailer. We could, I assume, skip through this and just get a general idea what it looks like. So yeah, it's seems to be team-based, player versus player, although it might not actually be player versus player as much as it is a single player against bots. And in a lot of ways it feels like, what would you do if you were going to try and make something like Splatoon without actually making Splatoon or having the paint element of Splatoon? That might work fairly well. Of course, this is also being published by THQ Nordic, so they may just be rushing out this game to try to make as much money as possible. And that may not work very well either. It's coming out for the PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC for $30. An all-new 3D cooperative game, so it does seem like you are just playing with your friends against bots. instead of it turning into a multiplayer game, which is, I imagine, what they were thinking originally. Now, we do need a competitor to Splatoon, but I think it probably goes a little too far in the other direction to be playing a South Park game all the time. South Park is not super popular at the moment, so I couldn't really see people just making it their new Call of Duty or their new Splatoon alternative that they're playing on non-Nintendo consoles. I kind of would like to see this game succeed, but I suspect, yeah, at best it will be well received and then quickly forgotten. Right, and so that is all of the Gematsu articles. Let's go through the game developer articles quickly. Savage Game Studios rebrands as Neon Koi and has a new action game focus. PlayStation acquired Savage Game Studios last year to help with mobile plans, but the rebrand to Neon Koi may be more than a name change, which, yeah, it sounds like it. I imagine PlayStation's mobile plans have fallen through terribly, and yeah, we still don't really know who's going to be the next person actually in charge of PlayStation anyways. Like, mobile plans in general would make a lot more sense if the PlayStation Portal was its own mobile Switch competitor. I suppose we really should look at the PlayStation Portal as an entire generation late competitor to the Nintendo Switch, where it would have made a lot more sense for them to have been just a couple of years late and run an also ran product for PlayStation. New Vita, new PS Go, something that could at least download old PlayStation Portable and Vita games and play them, if not also play PS3 or PS4 games at some level. Let's see, we already talked about A Plague Tale Requiem getting 3 million players. We already talked about Sony being sued. We already talked about Sam Altman. Playdate Marketplace catalog has expanded to over 100 titles, which doesn't really mean much when you remember that the 100 titles in the Playdate are usually incredibly small games that can only really interact with a D-pad, 2 buttons, and a crank, and are can't be that big in coding size either, because the Playdate, while a very expensive device that nobody has talked about, I think, at all this year, it doesn't really have that much room. If you wanted something like the Playdate, there's several build them yourself type projects out there that would be cheaper and more educational, really. Let's see. Mimi Games bids farewell to the Shuttle Gambit, The Cursed Crew, with 2 DLC packs. Then Social Club branding being removed. And then Agent being axed a long time ago. And then that does all of our GameDeveloper.com articles. Which would bring us to the Steam Fall List cleanup, which weirdly worked, but didn't work correctly, and I don't know why. Like, I only have one tab here that's from 2022. It's a visual novel, it's very well received, and it's not in early access, so I can put that on the wish list and remove it from the fall list. But that's pretty much all I can do, because there's no more tabs after that, so I don't know what happened there. It might be, again, that there's a problem here, and the next few games I look at are actually on the fall list, instead of just brand new games, which is a possibility, certainly, but not a certainty. Again, I'm gonna start over on the side here and work my way from the left side to the right side. This one feels like it might have been interesting, but I don't think it really supports English that much. Well, it says English is its only language. Interesting, because I could have sworn I was seeing Asian writing here. No, I guess that is all English. Alright, well, then I'm uninterested in it. Wizard Punk, I'll give a chance to. Now, starting on the left, working my way to the right is going to be a little convoluted, because that means I'm gonna have to kind of just remember what games I've looked at and what games I haven't looked at. This Oxytone game looks like it might be something. The real danger here is that I'll look at a game a second time, see it's on the fault list, and then close it when I need to leave those tabs open to make YouTube Shorts, which noticeably I should make YouTube Shorts. Like, I've got quite a lot of stuff I need to do after this stream anyways. So it would make a lot of sense to just start the YouTube short process going. I guess I should be somewhat happy. As much as we see repetitive things here on video games, we never really got anybody trying to make a bunch of garbage ASMR games. And I put that out there in the hopes that somebody doesn't start doing that. But yeah. We saw a few games that tried to be 8-bit chiptunes to Study 2 style games. I'll give Space Killer a chance, it looks polished enough. But yeah, we never got full on, this is going to be an ASMR game, or this is going to be some low effort thing with ASMR in the name. I'll give this a chance. Perhaps that is in part because I'm fairly certain we haven't seen this one today. There are just so many other gimmicks people rip off already that ASMR doesn't really make a lot of sense. Here we have the Jurassic Park collection, a collection of several terrible Jurassic Park games, none of which are really worth playing, in my opinion, but whatever. We'll make a YouTube short on it. Somebody might have some nostalgia there, just not me. Here we have a kind of nicely done dungeon crawler game, so I'll give it a chance. I'm being very generous there. Evo Escape Space. Give that a chance. Let's see. In all fairness, I guess it is also nice to say we really haven't seen a huge amount of trends happening there. There may finally have been something put into the YouTube algorithm so that you aren't just seeing people chasing trends and clickbaiting over and over again. This game is Japanese only. Would have given it a chance otherwise. It kind of feels like a game you could probably play even if you didn't speak Japanese, but you know, I'm not going to promote a game that outright does not support the language in the interface. That's a simple line I can draw to reduce the number of games I make YouTube shorts on, which is a general goal. Guardgrave. It's a different old school arcadey style game. You don't see a lot of those. Yeah, looking forward, if 2024 is the year in which we see no clickbait trends on YouTube, and it really is just people making good quality content on YouTube. That would be an interesting surprise and nice, certainly. So now I have to go back to the left, so I'm just gonna keep on going back to the left and doing one group of tabs over and over again. So we try to evaluate what might be good. And that's all it really is what might be good. Looks like we've got a math game here. That's probably a joke troll game, too. Nico Water doesn't look polished enough. Looks just like a garbage asset flip game. Now, what we have been seeing up for the past 3 or 4 weeks even is a fairly high amount of adult games. So if all of a sudden the autumn sale happens and there are no adult games being shown, then what we may very well have been seeing is them clearing off the way so that they can censor and not put out any adult games during the autumn sale. Although, what does that really accomplish? Because you already have Lewd Jim showing up on the front page for the small percentage of people who have allowed adult games to be on the front page and promoted. And the games really are just going to be a week or two old at this point. If anything, looking at the number of games I have left to look at, it feels to me like there's a fairly small number of games that have been released at all on this Black Friday, Thanksgiving holiday period. And so if I actually saw no adult games today, I could arguably make a statement that it may just be because there's a smaller percentage of games overall. But here is an adult game. It's not very nicely animated. It's a 2D, probably Western animator. You have these ladies in business suits, not business suits, but black tie and button-up shirt and black skirts, and they have big boobs and big hips, and they're generally a little bit on the chunky side, and that's kind of it. A lot of characters are drawn in silhouette and just black silhouette, which you don't see that very often. It's called Cufflinks and Cages. The description is you've been locked in chastity by your cruel boss. Will you submit to her sadistic whims or let the company find out your secret in this futa on futa chastity focused visual novel? So it's dick girl on dick girl, and you've been apparently locked in a chastity belt. The game is early access. It says it's English with full audio, which I question. It's $4.24. Let's see if I can show off all of this. I mean, I kind of can. There's nothing too extreme here. So here you have this kind of bad animation, which you could almost excuse because it's focusing in on really denial play and futa, the girls, and so maybe there's a two fetish there. Here you can see there's a key over the boss lady's neck. She's not really well animated too, and then the vast majority of the other people are just in these black silhouettes. And so it's just like not really polished enough as far as a adult game goes. Here we have one that was already on the follow list, so we can take that off since it's mixed reviewed already. We can eliminate that. Eliminate that. And probably eliminate this. It is a little weird when you have just like one screenshot that almost looks good and then the other screenshots look awful. You'd think it would be much more consistent overall. Tin Gao. It looks like it's some kind of Western dominoes game. Or Eastern twist of dominoes and mahjong. Feels like you're playing dominoes, Western dominoes on a Eastern mahjong table. Is there enough visual polish here to say yes to this game though? No, not really. This is another one that I think we've already made a YouTube short on, or at least tried to make a YouTube short on. Doomsday Lonely Town. Doesn't look quite polished enough. Looks like it's a Chinese game. A Plants vs. Zombies type game, except for it's humans instead of plants, could work. You just kind of have to get the visuals really polished and realistic, or go with a cartoony style like Plants vs. Zombies did. And inherently, even Plants vs. Zombies only really succeeded in their first game and didn't bring about a huge amount of success of a long-running series, which, yeah, very few mobile games did lead to long-running series. Angry Birds released a bunch of games, but I'm not sure they had massive success by releasing a bunch of games. And unless my macro is broken, which I just don't see how it would be broken in such a way that it would have stopped early, it seems to me like there is just not that many games that came out in the past couple days. Okay, here we have another adult game called Hypnosis Sister Clicker, which is a 2D anime lady, kind of anime style. I'd still feel like this is probably a Russian animator. Big boobed lady in a nun's habit, black dress and a nun hat, and definitely seems like it's just a clicker game for the most part, with lewd imagery as far as the upgrades you can buy as an automatic clicker game would go, and then it eventually unlocks some screenshots when you succeed. It is selling for $5.94, which for a clicker game might be a little too expensive. It's Japanese and English in the interface and subtitles, no voice acting. There's real no indication on just how long the game would be overall. And for a clicker game, it probably has to be fairly long. There's always been this inherent contrast with those types of games that go on forever, that they just don't work well in an adult game setting, where you probably don't want to spend 15 hours playing one adult game, seeing 4 or 5 adult scenes, whereas a clicker on a cell phone that you're just wasting time on might make more sense. Interesting. A language learning RPG. I'll give this a chance. Let's see. Battle Rockets. Almost would say yes to this, but no. TMM verse. It's gonna be no. Bug bots. I'll give this a chance. Ghost Mission. It's gonna be a no. Alright, and so I'm just gonna now click on everything and make sure I've seen everything. Now, arguably, I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, about 12 new games that I've made YouTube shorts on, and then on top of that I added maybe 14 things from Gamatsu. So that's about average for the time. So if anything, the percentage of bad games severely decreased way more than the percentage of potentially good games. And yeah, I think there really is room there to make that assumption and potentially try to curate a better experience for the Steam Marketplace if there was a way to just reduce the percentage of bad games while not really eliminating the opportunity for good games to be highlighted. That would be a lot better. If only every time I streamed I could just very quickly breeze here. Normally I'm so mentally exhausted by the time we hit the end of the show that I'm just completely out of it, but heck, I was able to play extra Yu-Gi-Oh today and I still don't feel that tired. And yes, I've gone 3 hours and 22 minutes, and I'd like to keep the streams down to 3 hours. I could probably eliminate Yu-Gi-Oh and get it down to 2 hours if I just decide to stop playing Yu-Gi-Oh altogether, which maybe that is something to think about, but I'm not leaning towards doing that right now. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. Have a happy Thanksgiving, Black Friday, whatever you want to celebrate in this time period. Happy holiday of some sort. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's a link down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.